The casino station always looked different after closing hours. Lights dimmed, music faded, and most visitors drifted back to their rented rooms or shuttle docks. Only a few workers still moved through the long metallic halls, cleaning tables or restocking machines before the next cycle began. Among them, Taryn Velsali walked slowly toward the quiet employee corridor. Carrying a small bag of translation tablets she had repaired during her shift. She liked this time of night. The station felt calmer when the noise faded, and she liked hearing nothing but the steady hum of power lines under the floors. Taryn was a young linguist from a peaceful world, sent to the station to help decode the odd mix of languages used by visitors. She enjoyed the work, even if it sometimes meant long hours. Her coworkers were friendly, especially the human bouncer, who worked near the card rooms. His name was Grayson Holt. He was tall, strong, and had a scar across one eyebrow that made him look fierce. Yet he always treated her with patience. She liked talking to him during breaks, even if he barely spoke about himself. He reminded her of an ancient stone wall, solid, quiet, and hard to move. Tonight she expected to see him on her way out, leaning against the security post like usual. But when she reached the corner, the station lights flickered once. She paused, surprised. That rarely happened. She took one more step, and a cold object pressed against her back. Before she could turn, someone grabbed her arm and yanked her into a side hallway. The bag fell from her hand, scattering tablets across the floor. A rough voice whispered, "Don't scream." She froze. Her heart hammered, but she kept her mind steady. 3 strangers surrounded her, all wearing dark jackets with the same strange symbol. Their faces were half covered by masks that filtered their voices. She recognized none of them. One held a stun device. Another carried restraints. The third, a tall figure with sharp eyes, checked the empty hallway, then pushed her farther inside. Taryn tried to speak, but fear made her voice catch. She forced herself to breathe slowly, remembering the training she had received as a linguist: never panic, always observe. When the tall man finally looked at her, she asked as calmly as she could, "What do you want from me?" His reply was flat. "We want the Earthman, the bouncer." Her stomach tightened. "Grayson? You know his name," the man said, sounding satisfied. "Good. You will help us bring him to us." "I won't help you hurt him," she said. The man laughed softly, though there was no warmth in his voice. "We don't need your permission. We just need your voice." Humans respond quickly when someone they know is in trouble. Especially that one. They pushed her into a storage room, forced her to sit, and tied her wrists behind a metal support bar. The door closed with a heavy clang. The room was dim and silent, except for the slow hiss of a ventilation pipe. The kidnappers whispered among themselves, just outside the door. Taryn tested the restraints quietly. Too tight. The metal bar offered no leverage. She took another slow breath and tried to stay calm. Fear would not help her. She listened carefully to the voices outside. She heard at least 4 people now. They spoke quickly, angrily. She could not understand all of it. Some words were in a smuggler's slang. She had only studied briefly, but she understood enough to know they were afraid. Not of her, of Grayson. That surprised her. Taryn knew humans had a reputation for being strong and stubborn. But these criminals sounded like they feared the bouncer more than station security. Why? The door opened again, and one of the kidnappers stepped inside holding a small communication pad. "You're going to call him," he said. "No," she replied. His eyes narrowed. "If you don't, things will get worse for you." Taryn kept her voice steady. "Then hurt me. I won't bring him to danger." A second kidnapper pushed forward, irritated. "You think he will save you? He's just a human. A loud, simple creature." "He is not simple," she said. "And yes, I trust him." Her calm answer irritated them more than a scream would have. The first kidnapper leaned close. Why? Because he never lies, she said. Because he protects people. Because he notices when someone is in trouble, even if they say nothing. And because he has never once made me feel small or afraid. The kidnapper stepped back, annoyed. You are trying to sound brave. I don't need to sound brave, she replied. I only need to tell the truth. The kidnappers left the room again, arguing in whispers. Taryn sat still, her wrists burning from the restraints, but she kept listening. Every word they muttered gave her more clues. One had a nervous tremor in his voice, another kept complaining about the job being rushed, and the leader tried hard to sound confident but failed each time Grayson's name came up. They spoke about how humans fought, how humans didn't feel fear the same way, how humans were unpredictable. They had heard stories, maybe exaggerated, maybe not, about human loyalty and human rage. Taryn had seen some of that loyalty herself. She remembered the night a group of drunks insulted her accent, and Grayson simply stepped between her and them without saying a word. The moment they saw him, they backed down. She had not fully understood why. Until now. Time passed slowly. The kidnappers argued more, growing less organized. Taryn kept cataloging their voices, their habits, their weaknesses. She knew she would need that knowledge when Grayson came, and she believed with her whole heart that he would come. She started working at the ropes again, trying to twist her wrists just enough to create a small gap. It hurt, but she didn't stop. She needed every second Grayson bought her by not arriving yet. She needed to be ready. At last, footsteps approached. The leader entered the room again. His patience was gone. You're going to call the bouncer now, he said firmly. You will read exactly what I tell you. If you don't. Taryn raised her chin. I won't help you. He stepped forward in anger, raising a hand as if to intimidate her. She didn't flinch. He paused, clearly expecting fear. Instead, he saw quiet determination. Why do you trust a human so much? He asked. Why him? Taryn answered simply, without hesitation. Because he will not abandon me. The kidnapper stepped back at her steady tone. For the first time, she saw real doubt in his eyes. Outside the room, the station's distant vibrations changed. Lights flickered again. But this flicker felt different, heavier, like something important had shifted in the air. Somewhere in the station, Grayson Holt had learned she was missing, and he was coming. Grayson Holt had finished his shift only 10 minutes before someone told him that Taryn Velsali had not returned to her living quarters. At first, he didn't worry. Taryn often stayed late to repair translation tablets or help new workers understand visitor languages. But when he checked the hallway near her usual route and saw her small bag lying on the floor, open and scattered, his calm expression changed. He crouched and touched the fallen tablets. None were broken. They looked as if they had been dropped suddenly, not set down. The security cameras along this hall were dark, as if someone had turned them off at the same moment. That was not normal. That was deliberate. Grayson stood up slowly. His face became still, almost blank, but inside, something cold and heavy settled in his chest. He did not raise his voice. He did not run. Instead, he walked straight to the security desk and asked for the last recorded footage of the hallway. The guards tried to tell him there was a small interruption in camera data. Likely, a maintenance error. Grayson did not argue. He simply stared at the guard with a calm, steady gaze until the man swallowed nervously. Check it again, Grayson said. The guard checked. And this time, he admitted what Grayson already knew. The cameras had been disabled on purpose. Grayson nodded once and left without another word. He had worked on the station for years. He knew every hallway, every shortcut, every zone where the lights flickered or the floors creaked. He also knew the groups that tried to do business in the shadows, Smugglers, petty thieves, debt collectors, and those who thought they were smarter than security. Most of them avoided him. Humans, they believed, were unpredictable. Some said humans acted like creatures with old instincts still burning under the skin. Others said humans were too loyal, too stubborn, too willing to fight problems with their whole body. Grayson did not mind these rumors. They kept people away from trouble. But tonight, those same rumors would work against the ones who took Terran. He started with the lower marketplace, a section of the station where lights were never fully bright and deals happened in corners rather than stores. As he stepped in, conversation shifted. Some people lowered their heads, others stepped aside. A vendor pretended to rearrange items, but kept watching Grayson carefully. He approached a stall where a small trader sold recycled communication chips. The trader tried to smile. "Mr. Holt, you're out late. Have you seen a linguist?" "Taran Velsali," Grayson asked, voice steady. The trader hesitated. I don't know. I haven't." Grayson placed one hand on the counter, not in threat, but in silent insistence. The trader swallowed. "3 men came through earlier," the trader whispered. They looked nervous. They asked about the bouncer shifts. They had a symbol on their jackets, like 2 broken rings. Grayson knew that symbol. A low-level smuggling ring, poorly organized but desperate enough to try anything. "Where did they go?" he asked. The trader pointed toward the maintenance tunnels. "That way. But be careful. They're scared of humans. They think you all react badly under pressure." Grayson didn't react to that. Instead, he gently tapped the counter once in thanks and walked off. As he moved deeper into the station, the noises changed. The clean hum of the main hallway faded into the uneven buzz of old wiring. Pipes clicked. Air vents groaned. This part of the station was rarely visited, and the lighting flickered in long waves. Grayson scanned every path, every shadow, every movement. He walked quietly, almost unnaturally silent for someone of his size. He stopped near an old service hatch and listened. Voices echoed faintly, too faint for most to hear. But Grayson had spent years in loud places, learning to catch small sounds. He heard someone argue. Someone else responded in a sharp tone. Then he heard a word that made his jaw tighten. "Earthman." They had her. He moved closer, keeping to the shadows, and found a narrow vent grill. Through it, he saw 3 figures standing in a hallway outside a storage room. One paced nervously. One leaned against the wall, arms crossed. The third was checking a pad repeatedly. "Why won't she cooperate?" the pacing one asked. "She trusts him," the leader said angrily. "She actually trusts the human." "That makes it worse," another muttered. "Humans don't stop when someone they know is taken. They don't freeze. They get sharper. Like animals." "Then we move fast," the leader said. "We make her call him. We force the meeting. We end this before he finds us." Grayson memorized their voices, their stance, their habits. He watched. Which one seemed most nervous? Which one listened to orders without question? Which one wanted to leave? He did not move yet. He needed them unsettled. He needed them worried. The more they argued, the easier it would be to slip in, take control, and get Terran out without anyone getting seriously hurt. He found a panel near the corner and pressed it lightly. A small service light flickered off and on. The smugglers jumped, looking around. "What was that?" one hissed. "Probably nothing," the leader said. Grayson pressed another panel farther down the hall. This time a pipe released a sharp hiss. The men tensed, whispering urgently. The leader tried to regain control. "Relax. He doesn't know where we are." Grayson stepped silently to the far end of the corridor and let a loose tool fall from a shelf. The smugglers froze. "Someone is here," one whispered. Grayson didn't speak. He didn't show himself. He just let the quiet settle again, cold and heavy. Fear grew in the silence. The smugglers started talking faster, their plans falling apart. Finally, the leader snapped. "Check the hallway." Now. The nervous one obeyed, walking toward the dark corner Grayson had just left. His hands shook. His steps were too fast, too loud. He looked around, but saw nothing. Grayson stepped behind him quietly and tapped his shoulder once. The man turned, saw nothing, then looked up and met Grayson's calm, emotionless eyes. The man stumbled back so fast he fell onto the floor, scrambling away. "He's here. He's—" Grayson put a finger to his lips, not threatening, simply asking for silence. The man went quiet instantly. The other two smugglers panicked and pulled out stun devices, pointing them in every direction except the right one. Grayson stepped forward, not running, not shouting. His presence alone pushed them back. "Where is she?" he asked quietly. The leader hesitated, trying to act brave, but his hand shook. "Stay back, human." Grayson didn't move. "Where is she?" The leader finally pointed at the storage room, voice cracking. "In there." Grayson nodded once. The leader tried to speak again. Maybe to negotiate. Maybe to beg. But Grayson simply looked at him. Not angry. Not wild. Just intensely focused. That look broke the leader's courage more than any weapon could. Grayson stepped toward the storage door. Inside, Taryn lifted her head. She felt it something in the air had changed. He was close. Taryn sat with her back against the cold metal bar, her wrists aching from the restraints. She had been listening carefully to every sound outside the door, trying to understand the kidnapper's mood. At first, their voices were sharp and controlled. But now, they were tense, uneven, full of panic. Something had changed. Then she heard a dull clang somewhere in the hallway. The kidnappers reacted immediately, whispering fast. The leader tried to calm the others, but even through the door Taryn could hear the uneasiness in his voice. She closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't know what was happening, but she felt it like a shift in the air, like the pressure before a storm. She didn't know how humans sensed things, but Grayson always carried an air of quiet awareness. If he was near, she believed he would find her. The door opened suddenly, making her lift her head. One of the kidnappers rushed in, his breath shallow and fast. He looked around as if something might jump from the corners. "What happened?" Taryn asked. "Nothing you need to know," he snapped, but his voice shook. He checked the tie on her wrists and tightened it unnecessarily, then stepped back toward the door. Taryn tried to read his expression. He wasn't confident. He wasn't even pretending to be. Before he could leave, something echoed down the hallway, a steady, heavy footstep. Not rushed. Not panicked. Calm. Slow. Certain. The kidnapper froze. Taryn knew that walk. The kidnapper backed away from the door and whispered. Another kidnapper appeared at the doorway, his hands shaking. "He was right behind me a moment ago," the first whispered. "I turned and he was just standing there, not saying anything." "Did he follow you?" I don't know." He moved without sound. Humans aren't supposed to move like that. Taryn almost smiled, even in her fear. She remembered how quietly Grayson moved during work, passing between tables without disturbing a single card game. Visitors often didn't notice him until he spoke. The leader came in last, trying to keep his voice strong. "We hold the girl. He won't try anything if she's in danger. We..." Taryn looked straight at him. "You think that will stop him?" The leader stared at her, breathing hard. Humans hesitate when someone innocent is at risk. "He will stay back." "No," Taryn said softly. "He will be careful. And he will not leave without me. That is what you should fear." The leader's jaw tightened. "Be silent." He moved toward the door again, but before he could open it fully, a shadow crossed the hallway outside. A tall figure stepped into view, Grayson Holt. He didn't rush inside. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at the three men gathered in the doorway. He didn't even glance at the stun devices they held. He just looked at their faces, one by one, calm and steady. One of the kidnappers backed up so fast he bumped into a crate. Another swallowed hard, gripping his device with too much force. The leader tried to keep control. "Stay back, human." Grayson did not respond. He took one slow step forward. Not threatening, just certain. "I said stay back." The leader repeated, this time louder. Taryn watched Grayson carefully. His shoulders were relaxed. His steps were balanced. His eyes held no anger, but there was a sharp focus in them, like he had measured everything in the room already. The distance, the angles, the exits, the captors, and her. He stopped a few feet away from the door. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice low. Taryn felt a sudden warmth in her chest. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice trembled slightly, but she kept her eyes steady. The leader lifted the stun device a little higher. "You can't take her. She stays with us until we get what we want." Grayson's expression didn't change. "What do you want?" The leader hesitated. He had not expected the question. "We want safe passage. A shuttle. Money." "You won't get any of that," Grayson said in the same calm tone. "Let her go." "You're not in charge here," the leader snapped. "No," Grayson agreed. "But you're running out of time." "No." The kidnappers exchanged uncertain looks. None of them wanted to be the one standing closest to Grayson. They began stepping back, their confidence fading. The leader waved the stun device toward Taryn. "Don't come closer." Grayson didn't move. "I'm not moving," he said. "And you're not hurting her. You don't want that trouble." The leader's hand trembled. "You think I'm scared of you?" One of his own men whispered. "We are, sir. Everyone's scared of humans. Especially this one." The leader rounded on him. "Quiet." While they argued, Taryn twisted her wrists again, trying to work the restraints. The ropes scraped her skin, but she kept going. If Grayson created even a moment of distraction, she needed to be ready. Grayson spoke again, voice steady. "You're boxed in. Security will know soon. If you end this now, you walk away alive. But if you push further, you won't like what follows." The leader lifted his chin. "Is that a threat?" "No," Grayson said calmly. "It's a fact." The kidnappers stared at him. His voice wasn't loud, but something in it made their hands tremble. It wasn't anger or cruelty. It was certainty. The leader finally snapped. "We take the girl with us." He turned toward Taryn, reaching to pull her upright. Taryn acted first. She threw her weight sideways, knocking her chair against his leg. The movement wasn't strong, but it was unexpected. The leader stumbled, and the stun device slipped in his hand. Grayson entered the room in an instant, not with rage, not with reckless force, but with smooth, controlled precision. He stepped between Taryn and the kidnappers, positioning himself like a barrier. The kidnappers froze, drawn back by the sudden shift. Grayson glanced down at Taryn. "Close your eyes," he said quietly. She obeyed without question. She heard movement fast but not chaotic. A few sharp sounds of objects hitting the floor. No shouts, no screams, no pain-filled noises. Just quick, decisive actions. Grayson wasn't fighting wildly. He was disarming, controlling, stopping the danger with the efficiency of someone who had done this before. When he finally said, "You can open your eyes," the room felt different. The kidnappers were on the floor. Not hurt badly, but unable to stand. Their stun devices lay far from their reach. Grayson crouched beside Taryn and examined the restraints. His touch was gentle. "You okay?" She nodded. "Yes, because you came." He didn't smile, but his expression softened. As he untied her wrists, she whispered, I told them you would come. They didn't believe me. Grayson looked toward the kidnappers, who avoided his eyes. They should have, he said. Taryn stood slowly, wincing at the stiffness in her arms. Grayson supported her without making a big show of it. She looked at him with quiet gratitude. You weren't scared? She asked. Of losing you, he answered simply. Yes. She felt her heart skip. But before she could speak, the hallway outside echoed with approaching boot station security, finally arriving. Taryn glanced at the fallen kidnappers, then at Grayson. They're more scared of you than they are of security, she said softly. Grayson shrugged. Let them be. Security rushed in, shocked at what they found. But Taryn wasn't looking at them. She was looking at the quiet, steady human who had walked into danger for her without hesitation. The security officers took control of the hallway quickly, but their voices and movements felt far away to Taryn. Her attention stayed on Grayson as he guided her out of the storage room. She leaned on him lightly, not because she couldn't walk, but because her legs trembled from the long hours tied in one position. One of the officers stepped forward. Mr. Holt, we need statements. Both of you. Grayson gave a short nod. She needs medical check first. Taryn shook her head. I'm fine. I need to stay with him. The officer hesitated, then allowed them a moment. Grayson led her to the nearest bench, against the hallway wall. He didn't ask if she was hurt. He simply sat with her, letting her breathe in the open air again. His presence alone made her feel steady. Your wrists, he said finally, noticing the bruising. It looks worse than it feels, she said. He didn't look convinced. She watched him quietly, noticing the small details that most people missed. His hands were steady, his breathing calm, his eyes sharp, scanning every corner as if danger could still appear. But his jaw was clenched just slightly, only enough for someone who knew him well to notice. You were worried, she said softly. He looked at her, and the tension in his jaw eased. Yes. 1. 4. She felt warmth rise in her chest again. Thank you for coming. There was never a moment I wasn't coming, he answered. Before she could reply, one of the security officers approached with a tablet. We have questions about what happened, the smugglers said. The smugglers talk too much, Grayson said, not unkindly but firmly. Taryn almost smiled. She touched Grayson's arm gently. Let me speak. He nodded and shifted so that he blocked her slightly from the busy hallway. The officer asked her what she remembered, and she told the story clearly, step by step. She left out nothing important but kept her words simple. When she finished, the officer thanked her and stepped away to write the report. Taryn leaned back against the wall, feeling the long night catching up with her. Grayson noticed instantly. You should rest, he said. Later, she whispered. Just give me a moment. Security moved around them, taking the restrained kidnappers into custody. The smugglers did not resist. They kept glancing at Grayson nervously, as if expecting him to look their way again. He did not. He seemed more focused on Taryn than anything else. After a few minutes, one of the officers approached again, this time sounding more unsure. Mr. Holt, we, reviewed the hallway footage. The part that wasn't corrupted. Grayson raised an eyebrow. And? The officer glanced at his colleagues before saying, You moved through those tunnels like you knew where they were before you got there. I've worked here for years, Grayson said simply. That may be, the officer said carefully. But the way those smugglers reacted, they said, You appeared out of nowhere. Taryn responded before Grayson could. He was careful. And they were careless. That's the difference. The officer nodded quickly, as if relieved not to challenge either of them further. Then, he walked away. When they were finally alone again, Taryn turned to Grayson. They're afraid of you. They were afraid of the idea of me, Grayson corrected. The stories they told each other did half the work. Is there truth in those stories? She asked. Grayson thought for a long moment. Some. Taryn studied him. You didn't look angry. You didn't shout. You didn't even raise your voice. I didn't need to, he said. Fear grows faster in silence. She blinked, surprised. You did that on purpose? He nodded once. If they were scared, they made mistakes. If they made mistakes, I could reach you faster. Her breath caught. She had known Grayson was protective, but she had not understood until now how far he would go to shield someone he cared about. A medic walked over then, holding a small scanner. May I look at your wrists? He asked Taryn. Grayson shifted slightly, standing half a step closer to her, like a silent guardian. The medic worked carefully and nodded. Just surface bruising. You were lucky. She wasn't lucky, Grayson said. She stayed calm. The medic smiled politely and moved on. Taryn glanced at Grayson again. You give me strength, she said quietly. You don't need me for that, he replied. She lowered her eyes, thinking. Maybe not. But it helps. He didn't argue with her. After the medical checks were done, the officers allowed them to walk back toward the safer parts of the station. The station lights had returned to normal brightness, but the halls were still mostly empty. Taryn walked beside Grayson, staying close. When you came into the room, she said softly, I wasn't scared anymore. Too. That was the point, he replied. No, she said, shaking her head. Not because they were distracted, because it was you. Grayson didn't respond immediately. He seemed unsure what to say. They reached a quiet corridor near the residential section. The station hum was gentle here. The lights, soft. Taryn stopped walking and faced him fully. Grayson, she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. Why did you come alone? You could have waited for officers. He met her eyes. Waiting wasn't an option. No. Why? She whispered. He looked down, then slowly back at her. Because you're important to me. Her breath caught again, softer this time. She had hoped for those words, but hearing them felt unreal. You're important to me too, she said. He didn't speak, but something in his expression softened in a way she had never seen before. He looked gentler, almost vulnerable. They started walking again, slower now, as if neither wanted the moment to end. When they reached her door, she turned to him. Stay for a moment, she asked. He nodded without hesitation. Inside her small living space, she sat carefully on the couch. He stood near the door, unsure if he should move closer. You can sit. He sat, but not too close, giving her space. I keep thinking about what they said, she admitted. About you being dangerous. Dangerous to them, he corrected. She smiled softly. Yes, not to me. Never to you, he said. The words settled between them, warm and certain. For the first time since the kidnapping began, Taryn felt completely safe. Not because the danger was gone, but because Grayson had proven something she already believed. Humans were frightening only to those who threatened what they cared about. To the people they protected, they were something else entirely. Something strong, something steady, something worth trusting with her life. The next morning on the station began quietly, as if the long night had never happened. Lights brightened slowly, warm yellow instead of the cold white from the emergency hours. Cleaning drones hummed through the hallways. Workers returned to their stations, unaware of how close things had come to disaster. Taryn Velsali woke later than usual. Her body ached, but the pain was light and fading. What lingered most was the memory of Grayson's voice, steady, calm, always there at the right moment. When she stepped out of her room, he was waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. He looked tired but alert, like someone who had remained awake just in case she needed him. You didn't sleep, she said. I slept a little, he replied. On the floor outside my door? Grayson didn't answer. He didn't need to. She gave him a soft smile. You're impossible. Just making sure you were safe, he said with a small shrug. They walked together to the medic station for the final checkup. People stared at them as they passed, not rudely, but with curiosity. News traveled fast on the station, especially when it involved the mysterious, scary Earthman who had dismantled a smuggling ring without raising his voice. Terran noticed whispers following them. That's him. He went in alone. He didn't even use a weapon. That human. They say the smugglers froze when he looked at them. Terran walked a little closer to him. Grayson didn't react to any of the whispers. His face stayed calm, but she saw how he scanned the hallways with quiet caution. Not paranoid, just always aware. After her medical check, they were summoned to speak with the station commander. The commander was a tall, silver-skinned Kestri woman, with sharp features and colder eyes. She sat behind a wide desk and watched the two of them closely. I've reviewed your reports, she said. An unusual incident. Miss Velsali, you showed remarkable control under pressure. Terran bowed her head slightly. Thank you. The commander turned to Grayson. As for you, I'm not sure whether to reprimand you for acting alone or thank you for preventing a hostage situation. Grayson did not shift. I did what needed to be done. So the rumors say, the commander said dryly. She folded her hands. The smugglers are in custody. They're frightened of you, Mr. Holt. One of them claimed you appeared like a silent shadow. Another said, your stare felt like a pressure on the air. Terran hid a smile. Grayson simply said, they were nervous. It made them exaggerate. Perhaps, the commander said, though her eyes suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Still, you protected a fellow worker. You acted without causing harm. That is more than some officers manage. Terran felt a warm flicker of pride for him. I'm not giving you a reward, the commander continued, but I am giving you the rest of the week off. Both of you. Terran blinked. Me? Yes, the commander said. Because you clearly won't let this human out of your sight for at least 2 days. Terran's cheeks warmed. Grayson seemed unaffected, but she noticed his ears turned slightly red. They left the office quickly. When they reached the central viewing deck, an open area with windows showing the endless stars, Terran stepped to the railing and leaned forward. Grayson stayed close, hands resting lightly on the edge. For a long moment, neither spoke. She finally asked, do you ever get used to people being afraid of you? Not really, he admitted. But I don't focus on that. What do you focus on? On the people who aren't afraid, he said simply. She looked up at him. Like me? Yes, he answered. A soft warmth spread across her face. She turned back to the stars, her voice quiet. I told them, I trusted you. I heard, he said. You did? Through the door, Grayson replied. Your voice was steady. Braver than mine would have been. Drode. Terran shook her head. You were the brave one. You walked in alone. He paused. I didn't feel brave. I just felt determined. To save me? She asked. Grayson didn't speak at first. Then he nodded. Yes. Terran reached out and lightly touched his hand on the railing. He didn't pull away. His fingers curled slowly around hers, warm and steady. She took a quiet breath. The smugglers kept asking, why? I trusted you. I didn't know how to explain it to them. What would you say now? He asked. She turned toward him completely. Because you always show up when it matters. You don't talk big. You don't pretend to be a hero. You just stand there solid and calm. And suddenly I feel like nothing can touch me. He looked almost surprised by her words. And, she added gently, because you care. More than you want people to know. His jaw tightened slightly, not with discomfort, but with a feeling he couldn't easily express. "I don't hide it from you." She smiled. "I know." They walked the deck for a while, talking quietly, away from curious eyes. Taryn told him about every detail she remembered, from the kidnapping, the voices, the arguments, the panic. He listened to all of it, asking small, careful questions. He told her about the search, how he followed the clues, how he used silence to keep the smugglers off balance. She listened with wide eyes, impressed by how much thought he had put into saving her. "You weren't just strong," she said. "You were smart." "I had to be both," he replied. "Because you mattered." When the walk finally ended, they stopped near the branching corridors that separated their living areas. Taryn hesitated, then looked up at him with a soft, hopeful expression. "Would you stay with me again tonight?" she asked gently. "Not outside the door. Inside. Just for company." Grayson looked down at her, eyes warm and certain. "If that's what you want." "It is," she said. He nodded. "Then I'll stay." They walked to her room together. Once inside, the room felt peaceful, like a shelter from everything that had happened. Taryn sat on the couch again, and this time, Grayson sat right beside her. She leaned against him softly, her head resting on his shoulder. He didn't tense. He didn't shift away. He simply wrapped one quiet, protective arm around her. For a moment, she let the silence settle. "Grayson?" she whispered. "Yes." "You are not scary," she said. He lowered his head slightly, letting her words sink in. "To the rest of the station," she added with a small smile. "Maybe." "Good," he said quietly. "If it keeps you safe." She closed her eyes, comforted by his voice, his presence, his warmth. And as the station drifted through the stars, she knew the truth she would tell anyone who asked. The scary Earthman was only dangerous to those who threatened her. To her, he was the safest place in the universe.